Welcome back to EMR 6480. This is your host, Dr. June Gothberg, and for this lecture blast, we are going to look at reflexivity and perception. So thinking about reflexivity, it's not just self-reflection. We did a little practice of that in class where you thought about your worldview and all that goes into that, and you jotted some notes. But reflexivity needs to go beyond that. Reflexivity is about self-reflection in the context of your research. It's an attitude of attending systematically to the context of knowledge construction, especially to the effect of the researcher at every step of the research process. So as you are getting ready to submit your research prospectus for your qualitative research project, you need to start thinking about your reflexivity in the context of what you are proposing. So reflexivity has three components. It has the personal, the methodological, and the theory. A researcher's background and position will affect what they choose to investigate. It will also affect the angle of the investigation, the methods judged most adequate for this purpose, the findings considered most appropriate, and the framing and communication of those conclusions. So your reflexivity impacts every piece of the research design, implementation, analysis, and dissemination. Preconceptions are not the same as bias unless you as the researcher fail to mention them. So as I reflected on your write-ups from your observation field notes, I noticed how your experiences, your expectations, and the framing of your research question influenced what you reported in your observations, what you put into your field notes, how you thought about that observation as you shared your debriefs. So I challenge you to take a little bit of time revisiting your field notes and also your debrief notes to see how your researcher position, one, influenced what you looked at, two, influenced what you looked for, three, how your researcher reflexivity, how your position influenced how you looked at it, how you observed it, and then how your reflexivity might have created some positive or negative biases. See what you notice about yourself. If you do accept this challenge, I would love to see or hear what you came up with. So I want to move a little beyond this into perception. And this is just a cute little cartoon where we have two men arguing whether it's a 6 or a 9. And you can see it depends on where you're standing. So when you think about perception, why is it important? Perception is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information in order to represent and understand the presented information or the environment. The study of perceptual processes show that their functioning is affected by three classes of variables. I know that is a very quantitative term. However, I want you to think about this as you're thinking about your qualitative research and how perception might play into either yourself as the researcher or your participants. So the three classes are the objects or events that are being perceived, the environment or the context in which the perception occurs, and the individual doing the perceiving, which could be you as the researcher, or it could be your participant. People's behavior is based on perception of what reality is not on reality itself. Let me say that one more time. People's behavior is based on perception of what reality is, not on reality itself. For some, you may be proposing a study based in perception. What are the perceptions of these participants? You need to understand your participants' perceptions aren't necessarily the same as reality. What you are studying is their perception of reality. For all, we need to be reflexive in order to ensure our researcher perceptions don't reduce the trustworthiness of our studies. And in qualitative research, trustworthiness is the cornerstone to showing your reader, your reviewer, that what you've produced is of high quality and empirical. So if you want to know more about perception, there's this 5-minute YouTube video that helps explain the science of perception. It's a neuroscience-based YouTube video, but it's short. It's only 5 minutes, and I do believe it's worth your time to watch it. I put the link here in this slide. When we think about seminal work in qualitative research, it was Lincoln and Guba who proposed that there are 4 basic criteria to ensure the trustworthiness in your qualitative studies. Remember, this is the way that people that consume your research can determine whether or not it's credible or it's trustworthy. So credibility is the first one of those, and credibility is defined by Lincoln and Guba as the confidence in the truth of the findings. The second criteria of Lincoln and Guba is the transferability. So how do your findings transfer to other contexts? You need to show that the findings have applicability in other contexts. Third criteria from Lincoln and Guba are the dependability. You need to, as the researcher, you need to show that the findings are consistent and that they could be repeated. Are they dependable? Finally, they introduce the criteria of confirmability. And this is the degree of neutrality or the extent to which the findings of a study are shaped by the respondents and not researchers' bias or the researcher's motivation or their interest. I'd like you to take a few minutes and think about sharing your thoughts on how are reflexivity and perceptions important to the 4 criteria of trustworthiness. I'd also like you to think about how do you plan to address this idea of reflexivity and perceptions and also trustworthiness in your research in general. And then specifically, how will you address this in your upcoming final prospectus? When I read that final prospectus, I should see a section on trustworthiness. Thank you for your time, and as always, you can reach out and email me or call me with your questions, or if you want to share with me your thoughts on what was presented here, I would love to see it.